Okay, it is recording. All right. So, hello everyone. I'm Sophia Peljovic. You have seen emails from me. Some have been concise, some have been frantic, and I appreciate you responding to all of them. I really do. Thank you so much for the flexibility that you guys have shown and the understanding through all of this. And luckily, all of our student teachers are in their placements. They all have supervisors. They all seem to be very happy in their placements so far, which is great. A few housekeeping things is that Michaela got her spreadsheet, and so she should be sending out the email with your contract on either Monday or Tuesday. She'll be sending that out. So take a look out from that email from Michaela's specific email. I'm going to send up a follow-up email to you guys after this meeting, because there is another specific email for the it'll say SOE stipend, but there is a new email. So if there's any questions that you have about your mileage reports or any questions about your like contract or the check that you will get, then you can email that specific email, because unfortunately Michaela will be leaving us for a new job at the middle of next week. So somebody else will be taking over for her. And that email is probably the easiest email for that person to then reach out to, and that you can get contact. But also, to be safe, if you do have any questions about your contract, whether you're not, this thumbs up thing bothers me all the time, whether you're not, if you didn't get your contract, or you submitted your mileage and you didn't get a confirmation email of that kind of sort, then you just add me to that email, just in like case that is the case, that you haven't gotten it, just because I know that there's a lot of people who are balancing taking over for different emails, so we want to make sure. So then I also know, so then I can also personally follow up or give them a like phone call, just to confirm those. And I know that, as you guys probably know too, the checks will probably come out closer for you guys, closer to the end of the placement time, and the mileage also, just because it has to be processed through several people. Because shockingly, even though the college is closing and we have lost a lot of faculty, apparently checks still need to go through 3 or like 4 people, which is fantastic, right? So so just as a like heads up for you guys. But yeah, so that is the contract stuff. And I think that covers the paperwork stuff. Anybody have anything that I didn't mention? Any questions that I didn't mention?
I still have a cooperating teacher contacted me yesterday. She still has not been paid from last semester. That would have been
Okay. Who was, oh,
actually when I worked with her, it was the early fall of Brenda Tessier. I don't
Brenda?
know. So I will send you a separate email about that. But
Yeah.
we want to make sure that gets cleared up before Michaela leaves so that we
Yes,
don't lose
absolutely. Yes.
track.
Send me her information, because so that was for the first placement.
It was, yes, in the
Okay. All
fall.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm glad that she noticed that, or that she kept tabs with that, and we'll definitely make sure that we can get her to
sure.
hopefully be added to this stipend for the first placement. And then but yeah, so just send me her email address, so then I can contact her, and then also keep her in the loop with Michaela and whoever is also taking over for Michaela's position.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. Um I think that was in terms of paperwork. So the other stuff is really just in terms of observations for your student teachers. Most of us have been in some kind of role in which we have done an observation on students, or on teachers and student teachers. Biggest thing to always remember is that they are still learning, and so sometimes it is that they don't, some things might seem obvious, but they are not. And I'm sure in your experiences you've also been shocked equally at some things that they are like, that seems like you should know that, but you know what, you don't. And so we're going to teach it to you now, and that's okay. And so just to keep that in like mind. But in terms of observations, and once you are all able to get into Watermark and you see all of your students, some little details about it is that you do not need to fill in a comment for all of the sections. That is not required, but if you would like to, I would say that it's at the like discretion of your kind of jotting down if you want to kind of remember what you why you rated them in that section at that like for that reason. Um and I know that Lita will go over all of the bigger components, so I'll kind of mention it as we're going along there too. But I think that, I mean, pretty much that's like the only thing that's really new for some people is Watermark and then using it and going on it. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same. The student teachers should be providing you with lessons. I would say lessons definitely for the lessons that you're going to be watching, but then also if you're asking, they're always going to be giving lesson plans to their co-op. But if they are not, but if you're kind of wanting to piece some things together, because maybe when you saw one of their lessons, it kind of seemed like it wasn't connected, then maybe you want to see what they had done like previously in their lesson, then you would be able to then maybe in that case, then you would want to see what their lesson plan was earlier. They might also want to show it to you to the best of your ability, you know, be able to provide them with that like kind of support if they want you to look over some of the lessons. Some supervisors will check in with their student teachers on a weekly basis just to check in. But we all have other things also that we have our lives. But if you're able to do that, that is very helpful. One thing that was cleared up last semester for the Watermark is the final evals. So when you're doing for the final evals, the students also complete one. It is the same one. It is the same form for all three of you, but the student has to fill theirs out first. So I will make sure that I will send a message out to the students, and I will also tell their seminar professor to remind them to fill out the like final eval. Probably do that towards the end of their or towards the beginning of their solo week, so that you guys can then move forward in filling out your like version also. As the supervisor, the final eval is like a general how they did in their 7 weeks. You and the co-op will also fill one out, and then at the towards the end of their placement, that's when you will meet with all like three of you to go over that. And then Lita will show you that there's like the final eval notes, I believe is the technical term. I don't know. And so then that's where you will kind of jot down the notes from like when you've had after your three-way meeting, kind of go over like how did the student how was the reflection on this on the student's point, then to the co-op, and then from like your standpoint too, and how you want, you know, what the student teacher could possibly work on, since they will also have a second placement. So some things for them to keep hold of as they continue, and then some things that they want to maybe work to get stronger on as they continue. There's a possibility that I might be forgetting something, but does anyone have any questions about in terms of scheduling? Somebody did mention that in the handbook there is a suggested calendar, but it didn't necessarily equate for it didn't really consider the February break. I know that schools sometimes, especially this year, they have different February breaks. Some of them are a full week, but some of them are kind of broken up. So I would just to make sure that you're on track with your with the forms that you need to fill out, just to be able to schedule and be able to like make sure that your observations are getting done without it necessarily also having to be that the student has an observation with their co-op on Monday, and then you have to then come in on Tuesday to make one up. So like you've been doing, communicate with the co-op to make sure that your observation dates are kind of equally distant apart. I would say a Monday observation and possibly a Friday one from you, and then either the like co-op. I don't think that's a big deal. But yeah, so just so you're clear and just so that the student knows too. Um, but I think that's pretty much it. And always reach out if you have any questions from me in terms of the students and their placements, or if you just want me to kind of have a heads up or just to know about something. Um, Always email me. I'm pretty sure I've seen all of your emails and you guys have contacted me. So that can always continue. Any questions before we go into the logistics of Watermark?
I have just a quick one, looking at the schedule. Um, it says something about the student's Google folder. And I just want to, is that something I should reach out to Zach, the student for, and just say, hey, make sure you've shared that with me?
Yeah, so the Google folder, we had used that in the past for the students to have a Google folder with all of their lessons in it. It's not a full requirement at this point, but if you wanted to, because I did tell all of the student teachers that they should have some folder that has all of their lessons in there. Because like as they would like continue, because as they are, even if they are when they become classroom teachers, then they will have a collection of their unit plans and their lesson plans. So then they should be able to I did say that they should be able to share that with you guys whenever like needed. So yeah, so that would probably be with their Google folder, just to make sure that they are held accountable for the work that they've been completing.
Thanks.
Mhm. Thanks for that. Actually, that was something I did want to mention. Any other questions? And then I'll give the reins, pass it off to Lita. Go ahead,
All
Lita.
right. Excellent. Well, hello again. I know I've met most of you, at least from the last training I did in the fall, or have been emailing with you throughout the fall with some of the fiascos we went through last, semester. I assure you, we did clear up a lot of the issues that were experienced last time around. So hopefully this semester is a much more user-friendly experience. I know we've had some folks already have issues with their accounts, but I am going to try to address some of those tonight. So the first thing I want to make sure folks are doing is they're accessing Watermark through the link I just shared in the chat. I know some of you also have faculty accounts. So if you do have a faculty account, I recommend using Watermark in like an incognito window, because what might be happening is it might be pulling up your faculty email that's linked to that account rather than, say, your personal account. So that's a good way to make sure that you are not looking at, the wrong version of Watermark, for example. But let me just go ahead and pull up my screen here. Oh, it's right in front of me. Okay. All right, so some folks have mentioned that they haven't received an email from Watermark. If you were to receive an email, it might look like some of the options that we have here, where it's indicating that you have account credentials. There's been a site alignment for the student placement, and in this case, it would be a mentor alignment for the student placement. If you haven't received those emails, you do have the option to go into the Watermark site anyway. So for example, if you are a new user that has never accessed Watermark before, what we recommend doing is doing the forgot password option. So I'm just going to copy my email so I don't forget it. Do the forgot password option and then send a link. And what'll happen is it will send a password reset email to that address that you provided. And then click on the link in the email. And it's going to ask you to create a new password. and then reset password. So then I would go to my login. Enter that password again, and then sign in. Okay, so as Sophia mentioned, we do have one student teaching course section in Watermark this semester. I know that was a huge hootenanny last semester where we had to try to remember what course codes our student teachers were in. So hopefully this will expedite the process for you and make it a little bit easier. If you are still seeing some of those old course sections in your Watermark account, you do have the option to filter by term. So we could do spring 2024, and that should pull up just the one course section. So you don't have to worry about, filtering through and trying to find your student teacher. So underneath the student teaching course section, you'll have those evaluations or observations. There's two ways that you can get to those evals or observations. You can click on the view details option on the right-hand side, or you can click on the show activities list, which is underneath the course section. Activities is just another fancy name for assignments or, for the evaluations and observations. So below that, you'll notice that these are a little bit out of order. But, you can see on the list of activities that we have labeled everything cooperating teacher or college supervisor. So this should help alleviate some of the confusion that we experienced last semester, so folks know what they need to be completing. So we don't have to go through the process of waiting for the cooperating teacher to fill it out before the supervisor can fill it out. There are two separate observations and evaluations for each party to complete. So if we look at, say, observation 1 in the list here, if I click on that, it's going to pull up the student or students that I need to complete the observation for. So then I know that it's waiting for me to complete the evaluation because it's in the awaiting assessment column. So to complete the observation for the student, I would click on the student's name. And it will load eventually. Okay, here we go. So in the observation, we have included a Tango tutorial. So this is a step-by-step guide on how to complete the observation. So if you have questions and, online learning services goes home for the night and you need clarification on something, this might be a good resource for you to use. And if I just pull that up really quick for you, it does go through the steps of like accessing the email account and then continuing with the steps in Watermark. So if you just scroll down, it has an image of the screenshot for that step and, what buttons to click, what observation, so on and so forth. And so that kind of walks you through the how-to for the observation. And each of the observation and evaluations, we have this kind of link in there that you can use for reference. So within this observation, there's the candidate information that you need to complete, the placement information, as well as the observation information. Say that 5 times fast. So after you fill out all of the information in the observation, you would complete the rubrics in the assessment panel. We did make sure that they were the correct rubrics this time around. I know there was some issues with that last semester. So just as a reminder, in the assessment panel, you have the option to click on the check boxes here, or if you want to see the full rubric with all of the details, you would click on View Rubric Details. I'm going to close some of these random tabs I have open. So this is what one of the rubrics would look like. For example, where you can click on the points that you want to enter for the student. You can also add a comment on the rubric for this element to clarify why you gave the score that you did. If you think it's necessary, if you need more context for why you gave them a 1 rather than a 4. Or if, for example, something wasn't observed in that lesson that the student teacher was doing, you could click NA as for not applicable and then add a comment as to why that wasn't observed. So
yeah, just to chime in, I know that like assessment can be a big one for the specific observations for those lessons. And so sometimes if you're able to stay for the full lesson, that's the best option. But if you're not able to, and then you don't necessarily see the assessment, then you might say that that's an NA. It's not necessarily a 1 because it's not that they didn't do it, it's that you just weren't able to see it. Again, this seems obvious, but just to make it more like clear, just the like difference. But then if there is something like, you know, if the student did not necessarily specifically state what the purpose of the lesson was, like, hey, today guys, we're going to be learning about this, then maybe that might be a 1 because you want to make sure that they're able to specify it. But I did explain to the student teachers that the observations, while there are like numbers, that it's more a guide to see that they are growing and that they are in like improving and making changes to their lessons, because like we mentioned at the beginning, this really is their first time that they are consistently teaching, and that this is like a full-time position for them. And so for them, it's really just these rubrics are really just to show growth. And so at the beginning, there might be some of those 1s or 2s, but that again, getting a 1 is not meaning that they are going to fail student teaching. It's just meaning that for that lesson, they would that like, oh, it just wasn't necessary. Like, just don't forget to do that for like next time. And then for the next time, then hopefully that would be improved to a 2 or 3 or even a 4. I made sure to specify in the meeting that I had with them that in my personal life as a teacher of 10 years, I got not plenty of, but I got 1s, and I still had a job at the end of the day, and I still made it through. So sometimes we get 1s because sometimes lessons just don't go the way that they go, that you want them to go, and that's okay because there's always room for growth. So I just wanted to put that little snippet in there as well.
yes. So like I, was saying, you could add a comment with the different elements to clarify, some of the points that Sophia brought up. So once you enter your scores, make sure you're scrolling down so you're seeing all of the, rubrics elements. You would click Save and Close in the upper right corner. If you remember from last semester, this might have just said close rather than save and close. But if you click Save and Close, what'll happen is it will transfer any notes or any scoring that you did for that rubric on the assessment panel. So you would just, for this example with the observations, you would just go through each of these rubrics on the right-hand side and enter your scores, fill out the information in the left side here. And then once you're done, you would click Submit in the upper right corner. Now, if you click Submit and it doesn't send it off and this button grays out, and you'll notice that all of this stuff is highlighted in red. So I'm missing my candidate information, I'm missing my program for that candidate, so on and so forth. Once you fix that, any sort of missing information, then you can click Submit and then it will move it to done. So let me just put in a couple of examples here so I can show you what it looks like when it moves to done. And I can't remember if I mentioned this already or if I mentioned it in the last meeting. The hours are blurring together. But so we did have something come up last semester where folks were asking us, why do I need to enter the information each time I complete the observations? So why do I need to enter the candidate information? Why do I need to enter the placement information? So when Sophia is pulling reports from Watermark, it's generating them into spreadsheets or CSV files. So the easiest way to track this information from the reports that were generated is if we have this information filled out in the form. So I just wanted to make a note of that, that is why we're asking folks to put in this information each time. So let me just go ahead, and this student did a really great job with the instructional practice.
And as Lita's finishing that up, just something that I mentioned to the co-ops too, that depending on your like device that you might want to, you can either have a Word document with all of the students, like with that information, with their name and their ID number and the school that they're at. So then maybe you can just copy and paste it, instead of having to type it. That might be just slightly easier than having to type it in every single time.
Okay, so you'll see now that with the candidate or the form, the observation, I filled out all the information, I filled out all the rubrics. Now the submit button has turned back to purple. So now I can click submit and send it off. And I'll know that it is done because this screen shows that it's done. It's moved to the done column, when I submitted it, the time, and who submitted it. So that's how you complete the observation. And it's the same form for each of the observations we have here. There isn't anything that drastically changes. So we have observation 1, observation 2, 3, and 4. So you'll notice with the evaluation week 2, this is a cooperating teacher form, but you do have the option to see the results from that evaluation. So if I click on my week 2 here, and I click on the student's name, and then Watermark loads. Okay. Next, I will click on the assessments history. And then I would click on the cooperating teacher's name to pull up what they put in for the scores. So if I get this to load, I can see that the cooperating teacher gave some unsatisfactories for, this student's evaluation for week 2. I can see all the information that the cooperating teacher entered in the form, and so on and so forth. So that's how you can see what the cooperating teacher sends in for some of those evaluations that they need to complete. So if I hit cancel and then done. Okay. So once again, this is a cooperating teacher form, but you can see that it's awaiting assessment. So the cooperating teacher hasn't submitted this yet, so I'm not able to see the scores. If you're seeing things in teal, that means that it's awaiting assessment. If it's purple, it's done. And to bring your attention to the final student teaching evaluation, you'll notice that this is awaiting submission, and the bar at the bottom here is orange. So this means that it requires the student teacher to complete a portion of the evaluation in order for the cooperating teacher and the supervisor to complete their portion of the evaluation for that final days of the student teaching placement. So you'll see here that right now it's awaiting submission. The student hasn't touched it. You'll notice if the student has started working on it, it will give you something saying updated on this date at this time. So if the student teacher says that they, oh, I submitted it, they might have just saved it, or, they didn't let it finish going through the submission process before it was passed on to the cooperating teacher. So if I click on the student's name, we did add, I forgot to mention this in the cooperating teachers meeting we just had, but there are Tango tutorials for the students and the cooperating teachers and supervisors that are right here. We also made a note that in order for the cooperating teacher or supervisor to complete the form, the student teacher must fill it out first. So they fill out the information here, as well as they have the same rubrics that you complete on the right-hand side in the assessment panel. They are completing those as well for their self-assessment or their self-evaluation, because we wanted to give them practice using rubrics. So once the student submits the final evaluation, you'll be able to see how they scored themselves in this section here. So like the
I just
other,
add also that the Tango tutorial is the most up to date of what Watermark has. So I know that for those who maybe got links in the fall for when we started with Watermark, those aren't necessarily as up to date now with how we have it structured. So again, if you have any questions about it, I would refer to the Tango tutorial in terms of that, or as always, you can reach out to one of us if you have any questions, but yeah, so I would refer to those definitely.
and so once again, we do have the rubrics on the right-hand side here. So there are 5 rubrics that need to be completed. Like I mentioned, we made sure they were all correct. I don't know why there was that random counseling one last semester, but here we are. So once again, you would click on View Rubric Details to pull up the rubric in a new tab. You would enter, how you felt the student did for those different elements of that rubric. You can add comments to clarify, why you gave the score that you did, if you so choose. Then click Save and Close. It will transfer those scores to that rubric. And if you just want to provide general feedback overall, you don't want to provide, individual comments for each of those rubrics, you do have the option to do the feedback box here. It is not required. So if you decide not to put information in there, it's not going to prohibit you from submitting the evaluation. So you might notice that I am entering scores, but it doesn't have that submit button in the upper right corner. It's because it needs the student submission in order to create the assessments and to save it. So just something to keep in mind.
I think just thinking off the top of my head that I might have the student teachers fill theirs out during their seminar, their last week of seminar. They'll all bring their laptops with them. I think most of them have them anyway, but they can bring them, so then we can assure that they all have theirs done beforehand, so then you guys can get yours done as well before you meet for your final meeting.
Yes. So I think I mentioned this before, but you'll see that there are 3 columns now where we have awaiting submission, awaiting assessment, and done. Done means all 3 parties have filled out their portions. And awaiting assessment means it's waiting on the cooperating teacher and the supervisor to fill out the final student teaching evaluation. So there is that. And then the last point of business is the summary notes from 3-way meeting. So this is just for the supervisor. The cooperating teacher can see this after the supervisor has completed it, but they do not need to fill this out. This is just for the supervisor. We had some confusion about that last semester. So if I click on the student's name, okay. So it has oh, actually, I noticed this does not have a Tango tutorial. Okay, well, if you have questions, just let me know. So it has the date from the 3-way meeting, which session it is, so session 1 or session 2, the placement information, the student teacher, cooperating teacher, college supervisor, and the areas of strength, improvement, growth. So filling out all that information. This is one of the few that, well, this is the only one that doesn't have any rubrics in the assessment panel. If you wanted to provide additional feedback, you do have this box as an option, but it's not required. So once you fill out this information, you would click submit in the upper right corner, and that would move it to the done column in the list for that student.
And just to add on to that, for the three-way meeting and even for the observations and all of that too, I think that you have your ways of like doing it. I would see it with you taking notes and then filling it out on like Watermark after the fact. So even for for the summary notes, if you want to jot down what you had like discussed and then later on fill it out in like Watermark, or you are free to fill it out and have it set up and then fill it out while you're with them. But it's completely fine if you wanted to just kind of write down some of the notes from the three-way meeting and then fill it out on Watermark after the fact also.
Yeah, and actually I would recommend having some sort of backup just in case. Technology is finicky and it sometimes malfunctions. And we did have, some folks that did save their observations or evaluations, and when they went to go submit, they weren't there anymore. So we do recommend that people do have some sort of backup, whether it's a document that they're working in, so they don't lose all of their hard work. So, just because, like I said, technology does weird things, and I just want to make sure that, people are as less stressed as possible. So that was the summary notes. I think I mentioned already that the observation, it's the same form each time, and you'll be able to see the cooperating teacher versions once, they submit them. And were there any questions that came up while I was going through things?
Lita,
Yes.
Lita, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've got two questions. Number
Okay.
one is I save everything.
Mm.
So when I do the final, when I do the rubric for everything, I save each week. All right. So that's okay to do that, right? Just hit
Yeah.
save first and then submit.
Absolutely. Yeah. If, I think that would be best practice, honestly, is just to click save. But I know sometimes folks are in a hurry and they just want to click submit, but I definitely would recommend saving it. When you save it, well, that's the cooperating teacher one. So 1 second. If I go to, let's say, observation number 2, and I want to assess my student here. And I end up entering some scores, and then, my cat breaks a vase in the background. Then I could click save, and it's going to, pull up that student list again. And I can see that it was updated on this date, that time. And if I needed to come back to it, I could click on, I could log back into Watermark or so on and so forth and click on that student's name. And then it will pull up what I entered from that last session when I was working in it. So.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the other question is, when I go for at the end with the three-way meeting, I like to have paper in hand. Is there a way you can print this out?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah. I will say that, let's see, let me take a look at, no, stop it. Okay. So if I go to the summary notes, I haven't seen a way to say like print, like you'll see that there isn't a print option up here,
Right.
but if you right click on the screen and then use the print option, it will eventually load.
It does, but it only prints pieces of it.
Yeah. So that was the next thing I was going to say, is like it only does portions of it at a time, which, is unfortunate. But I'm trying to think. Sophia, in the manual that you sent out, I promise I read it. Does it have paper versions of the forms? Because I know that was something that was available last time with the old version.
Yeah, it should still be in there or like a version of it. What I
Okay.
can do moving forward, it doesn't really necessarily solve the problem of
Mhm.
being able to just do this once and being able to print out the one that you have, but I
Right.
can make a like version that's just on like, because I think that this was an issue for the second placement also when I was there, and so then I started to make a like a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet version, just so that you
Mhm.
guys can have it. So just in case if you're not able to um upload it onto Watermark for whatever reason, then you can just use that like spreadsheet. So I can work on doing that. It doesn't necessarily solve the problem of you doing all the work on Watermark and then, but because they can't, yeah, because they can't transfer it. It on their end, it can't transfer into a spreadsheet on their end.
No, that's only something on the admin side.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, what I did was I just wrote it down what I had. So when I went
Yeah.
in, I had pieces of paper with all my information written down. So when I went with the three-way, I told my the cooperating teacher and my student teacher, this is how I rated you on this. This is how I rated you on that. It's a pain in the neck, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, and I think personally speaking, like, and that, like, because we need to use some kind of tool to prove that they went through student teaching and they had the like support that they did.
Yeah.
If that support comes on paper, if that support is coming through any other form that's not necessarily Watermark in that moment, it's on us. Then it's on the college for us to be like, no, yeah, they absolutely did, and I would vouch for the fact that it was done. However, it might have just not been done in the way that they might have
Okay.
wanted to be on like
Okay.
Watermark, but. So yeah, but please don't hesitate. Like I know there was a few people who reached out last time about like how they tried to submit it 3 or 4 times and they did it on this one and they did try to do it at home and then they tried to do it on this account. And so really for everyone's to maybe hopefully create less like headaches if that happens, do it once, maybe try it a like second time, but then just reach out and then we can figure out, so then you're
Okay.
not necessarily
Sure.
feeling that like
Yep.
stressed to get it done.
Not
Yeah.
it's really not a big deal. I just want to have all my information when I go to the meeting. So
Yeah.
but it works out.
Yeah.
I've been doing this too long, not to be able to bring it over there. So I'm
I
fine.
know.
I'm
Yeah.
fine.
So the last thing that I wanted to, well, I lied. Two things I want to mention before I'm done rattling on. So did I mention the browser issue in this session?
No, not on this one specifically,
Okay.
no.
Like I said, the hours are blending together. So I mentioned this in the cooperating teacher meeting a couple hours hour ago. But anyway, so make sure when you're accessing Watermark that you're using Google Chrome. So if you are using Safari or you're using Edge or something like Mozilla Firefox can sometimes be temperamental. We recommend using Chrome because those other browsers have a hard time hosting this website. So just make sure that you're using Google Chrome when you're trying to access Watermark. The other thing I wanted to mention is I did put in the chat our help desk at Strohs.edu email address. I'm sure folks are already familiar with having to reach out to us multiple times last semester. But I just wanted to make note that if you do have questions about some of the technical issues that you're coming across with Watermark, reach out to that email address rather than contacting our team members individually. Just because it makes it easier to troubleshoot things and people can assist you faster rather than, waiting on one person to get back to you. All right. Any other questions for me? Concerns? Fun facts? Okay. I'm done talking.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.